And welcome to episode 11 of the podcast. You may not agree with this,
but
I'm Lowery.
And I'm Eric Thomas.
And we are here in episode 11. That means week 11. That means the final week of the 2024 high school football season. And boy, Eric, that is hard to believe.
Yeah, and November is going to heat up for all these teams in the area.
Yeah, a lot of these teams that are playing to get in the playoffs or already know they're in and playing for playoff positioning.
Yeah, in the 4A division, we know it's just playing for positioning now, and a lot of teams can better themselves with like the area teams with Shady and possibly Independence even moving up the ranks.
The podcast, as always, is brought to you by Modley's Plumbing and Heating. You can dial Modley's at 304-253-HELP and by Massey's Power Sports. Got my Massey's Power Sport hat on. Actually, I look good with it on. I want to see how good I look without it, Eric. I'd laugh at that too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Eric, as we always do, we'll start in 4A. We'll recap. You were the field reporter at the game last week between Beckley and Oak Hill, and Oak Hill wins the game 19-14, and like you said, Beckley knows that they're already in the 4A playoff. They were fighting for positioning. As Beckley said, a skid as they've lost 3 in a row. But that really is going to help maybe Oak Hill's positioning. And I think we have to say it because I've heard it not just from you, but from so many other people. There was a lot of what's the word? Since it was the night after Halloween, maybe some spooky, quirky calls that took place over in Fayette County.
Yeah, it definitely felt like a full moon because the scene was eerie. I mean, it was, let me say this though, it was bad calls all around for both teams. So just most inopportune times for the Beckley team, it seemed they would shoot themselves in the foot. It seemed like the whole second half they lived on Oak Hill's side of the field, but just not able to generate many points.
Well, I know when I was doing the Shady game with Bill O'Brien last week, and you were the field reporter sending me updates, that Oak Hill got off to a quick start, led 13-0, and I was like, wow, I was a little surprised. And then you sent me where Beckley had taken the lead, 14-13. I thought maybe Beckley was going to take control of the game, and then Oak Hill got one more score, and that turned out to be the winning score.
Well, you're exactly spot on. When it was 13-0, and Beckley was able to battle back just before halftime and punch one in to cut it to 13-7. Then both teams had a possession to start the third quarter. Then Beckley was able to take control and go up 14-13. Then it pretty much stayed there, and both teams, had some errors. Oak Hill some bad punts. Even when they tried to flip the field, they got a 12-yard punt one time, and I thought that was the opportunity for Beckley to really seize the moment. And they got down, got a 15-yard unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, but all those penalties were borderline. That's an emotional game. As long as no kids are putting their hands on one another, I think the referees got caught up more in that, and it really hurt Beckley. They hurt themselves more than anything.
Well, now that Beckley will wind up with the final regular season game at home, they're going to be limping in more emotionally. They've lost 3 in a row. They lost at Princeton, a game perhaps they could have won. Maybe the Spring Valley got away from them early, and they were never in that game. In a game this past Friday against Oak Hill, they could have won.
Well, let's go back rewind to the Princeton game, and you and I talked about this. I think the Princeton game was one of those games they looked back on and said, well, we had it in our grasp. They had a couple people out, had a couple touchdowns called back. But I don't think they erased that game. I think that game led to them coming out sluggish against a Spring Valley team that really seized the moment. And then by the time Beckley woke up, it was too late. You can't do it against good teams. And then I think the emotions of going over to Oak Hill, coming off the heels of those two losses, I think they too amped up and it played a part. And I'm not taking anything from Oak Hill. They're well coached. They have good players, and they won the game.
So let me ask you this, just what I was saying. So you think it's fair to say that Beckley is emotionally limping into this last game against George Washington?
Yeah, and this is one of those games where George Washington in all sports to me is a Beckley rivalry. They battle in soccer. They battle in basketball back and forth.
Boys and girls, yes.
Boys and girls. And this football game is something about this game that brings out the best in both of them. But I think the slight edge goes to GW right now because Beckley is really emotionally probably drained with 3 big games in a row that they felt they let themselves down as teammates. So let's see if they can lift up the seniors and send them out with a victory on senior night.
Well, 5 or 6 weeks ago, we said that we knew when Beckley was 5-1 that the back half of the schedule was going to be a little bit more difficult than the first half, and that's been the case. And as you mentioned, senior night, George Washington will enter the game coming off a loss They lost to Hurricane 37-21. George Washington is 7-2. And Eric, I got to believe I don't have none of the polls or all the. It's not polls. It's actually rating system.
Yes.
But I got to believe that if George Washington can get this win and go 8-2, they would get a home game in the first round.
Definitely finish in the top 8 because you're going to get bonus points from Beckley, of course, and their 5 wins. Because there's another extra bonus point out there for them because the team that Beckley beat first game of the year now, that's looking to be a great win on the road because they've lost to Spring Mills and Beckley.
Well, and you and I will have that game Friday night on Video Productions. It's a 7:30 kickoff on Friday, November the 8th, the final night of the regular season. And, you know, Beckley knows they're in the playoffs, but what kind of team, like I said, emotionally, how will they show up? Because they know they're going on the road. You want to be able to get that win and have some momentum. You don't want to be limping in with 4 straight losses going into the playoffs.
Yeah, and this is where you're going to see how tight-knit group the kids are. No finger pointing. I didn't see that after the game. And you can tell by kids' body language. I still think they'll be all bought in, but you're going to have a George Washington team coming up here raring to go, so Beckley needs to match that intensity.
We'll look forward to that, Eric. I think it'll be a lot of fun. You and
I'm ready for that game. That's going to be a great Friday night lights.
All right, we got to take a look at the Shady game from last week when you were the field reporter at Oak Hill. You missed that game. Bill O'Brien and I had that game, and I'll tell you, that was a very interesting game. 35-14 Shady wins. If you look at the score, you think maybe Shady blew them out and won by 3 touchdowns. It was tight. In fact, I'll tell you about a tremendous play that Westside looks like they were getting ready to take the lead. But with that win by Shady, that puts Shady now at 7-2 and maybe in position if they can beat Wheeling Central on November the 8th. Shady perhaps can finish in the top 8 and get a home game.
Yeah, that Wheeling Central game looms big because Wheeling Central, as we said, they've got a few wins under their belt. They play a lot of out-of-state teams, Wheeling Central, so their record's a little sneaky, you know, as far as on the win-loss circuit. You know you're going to get a good team, but this Shady team has really, I wouldn't say surprised. I think they've lived up to what Coach Colacerto told us in our before the season preseason interview. He said, look, if we get through that first 3-game stretch and then we have these games at home, if we can come out of it 2-1, which they did, and they're living up to it, defend home field, and you got a chance to really make the playoffs and be in good position.
And, you know, a sign of a good team, if I told you before the game Cal Colacerto was going to complete 3 passes for, 20 yards. That was about all he did. He only played like 3 passes for like 20 yards, and they won by 3 touchdowns.
So that means all other phases of the game stood out. Like you said, a big defensive play by Bailey as I recall, you told me he stole.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you the story. Yes.
So all 3 phases, the run game, and we know they can run a little bit. It's all about the guys up front, and I think those kids are rounding out. They are a young offensive line, and they're getting better as each week.
Yeah, both teams really stuck to the ground game because the first half really flew by. And when I said that during the game, Bill O'Brien's like, don't say that because the second half will last forever, but it didn't. But Westside got down 7-0. Then they scored on their last 2 drives to end the half. But there was only 3 seconds left in the first half. The game's tied at 7. They had the ball to Shady 23. They had a seam route for a touchdown as time expired, kicked the extra point, and you could see the body language. Westside running off the field, excited. They carried the lead and the momentum into the locker room, and Shady was a little down. But Shady's coaches did a great job because Shady took the second half kickoff. Actually had to kick off, Shady kicked off the Westside, held them, got the ball, and went down and scored and tied the game.
And like you said, that is key coming out of halftime because coaches need to get the kids to get back up and buy in. Hey, we have 24 more minutes to go. That's why you play 4 quarters. And the coaching staff, I have a good grasp of it. We know those guys personally, and they've been in it for 20 plus years, and they don't get rattled. If you can keep the kids, you know, in it, and which they do, and they buy in, and they came back and won the contest.
Both teams stuck to the ground game. Each team only had 1 possession in the 3rd quarter. So as we fast forward into the 4th quarter, Westside's got the ball about the Shady 12, and they run a sweep. And it looks like it's completely open. It looks like Westside's going to take the lead. And Eric, out of nowhere, out of the dark of the night, somewhere, here comes Jason Bailey and just stripped the runner from the ball, stripped the ball from the runner, and takes off the other way. And it gets tackled at the 9-yard line. The very next play, Shady scores. They go up 21-14. They kick off. The very next play, Westside throws a pick. They score. Then Westside gets the ball again. Next play, they had three they ran 4 plays and turned the ball over three times on 4 plays. And just like that, it went from 14-14 to 35-14.
And I'm going to correct you on one thing because this is an honest mistake. It's Jalen Bailey.
Jalen Bailey.
But you've done 3 games in a row with different Baileys.
Right.
Jalen, Jason.
Right. Grade school basketball, the middle school game, all of them.
So
I know they're all brothers.
They're all brothers.
And they're all good athletes.
Yes. So, but anyway, Jalen Bailey brings what to the table? Championship pedigree.
Yes.
If you think about that play he made on the football field, that's what he does on the basketball court too as well. He's the guy that goes out there and takes a charge when a charge is needed, gets a bucket and one or something when something is needed. That's why I think kids, this is a whole nother podcast.
Right.
I think kids should play multiple sports because I think it elevates your knowledge and your game readiness.
Well, I'll say this: that's as good as defensive plays I've seen all year. Everybody can have their own take of what they've seen, what they haven't seen, and of all the games that you and I have done. And that we've seen many of good defensive plays, but that was just not a defensive play. That was a game-changing defensive play.
Yeah, momentum stealer. Exactly
Yes,
what he did. Stole the momentum that a lot of people say that.
You know, and it's funny that you said that because I made the comment during the broadcast with Bill O'Brien. In fact, everybody in the press box started laughing. I said, if someone would dress up for Halloween like momentum, I'd like to see what that looks like.
Yeah, I exactly like to see what it usually looks like a W. So somebody should just put a W on and say, what are you dressed up as? Momentum, baby.
That's right. This podcast, we need to
like, share, and subscribe at Warden Broadcast Network YouTube.
And it's also brought to you in part by Modley's Plumbing and Heating. You never know when you need a plumber till you need a plumber. Dial them up at 304-253-HELP. And by Massey Power Sports. Right now is the time to go get your side-by-side at Massey's Power Sports. Okay, Eric, now the Independence Patriots, after the loss to Princeton, they had a bye week, and now they'll wrap up on November 8th, their final game of the regular season against Summers County. Summers County came off a win over Liberty. Summers County 3-6, Independence 5-3. And I was talking with a lot of people today trying to figure out who might get a home game. And I do believe that Independence will get a home game. I can't see them, no matter what else happens in AA, even though with that loss and this win that many people think Independence will get over Summers County, I don't think that would knock Independence out of the top 8.
No, I think they're going to come in a solid 5 or 6 because they're getting points for teams that they beat recently. That's winning. Scott, they're still winning, you know. Right. Mingo Central getting wins, and that helps your point value in this point system. So I don't think that's going in anywhere, and I think I'll predict 5 or 6 coming in at the playoffs, and that's a home contest.
Well, that's a great thing for Raleigh County because we know Beckley's going to be in Quad A, and it looks like even if Shady was to lose to Wheeling Central, they just have to go on the road, but they're still going to make the playoffs, and Independence is going to make it. So you have 3 of the 4, and then, you know, Liberty just has not had the kind of year we thought they'd had. They finish up with Wyoming East. Wyoming East is 1-8. They're struggling. Liberty is 2-7. Here's a chance, even though Liberty's not having the kind of year they hope they'd have, still a chance to end the season on a good note. Yeah,
anytime you have a young mixture of talent, you know, they'll lose a few key players, but the core of that Liberty team is very young. Because you and I, when we did the games, I'd always point out, like, that's a sophomore, that's a freshman. So anytime, the future's bright. They have to hold on to the ball. Too many turnovers this season. And when the margin of error is slim, you cannot turn the ball over on any level of football and expect to win the contest.
Yeah, I think Liberty's got to get out of their own way, so to speak. Yes. And I think they've been their own worst enemy.
They have. I mean, and you hate that for a young team, but that's growing pains. You can learn from it and look for them to come out fired up and ready to win that last game of the season. Yeah, their kids play real hard, and we wish Liberty the best of luck. All right, now we'll switch our gears to some of the top games on the final week statewide. And in 4A, Eric, there's probably none bigger than numbered Martinsburg, who was number 1 coming in, probably still should be number 1, 9-0. They'll go all the way to Hurricane and take on Hurricane 7-2. Martinsburg has beaten Spring Mills on the road. They had Huntington come to them. I mean, they've got quality wins, but those are 2 big wins in West Virginia, beating Huntington early in the season and bringing Spring Mills, and now Martinsburg will travel to Hurricane. And you look for this Martinsburg team to come down to the southern part of the state where they expect to be. the first weekend of December, and they're going to come down and try to make a statement. So Hurricane, they have a lot of capable players, but this is a tall task when the Martinsburg Bulldogs roll into town.
And like I said, I don't have any idea or I have an idea how the rating system works. I just don't try to figure it out till it's all said and done. But I got to believe, even if Hurricane was to upset Martinsburg, I got to think Martinsburg's going to finish 1 or 2 regardless.
Yeah, they'll top 3 to 1.
Yeah, but I think one or two either.
Yeah, because that great road win at Spring Mills probably solidified those two in the
so much
top
points
spots.
in that.
Yes.
That's a bucket full of points.
Yeah, it is. It is.
That's a bucket with some extra points in that bucket.
I mean, anytime a Martinsburg team comes to town, that everyone in Hurricane, I think everyone in the surrounding area, if some Huntington team, but I don't know if they're home or not, but people will go watch that. Half of Putnam County and half of Cabell County and Kanawha County will probably go try to watch that game.
Spring Mills only lost to Martinsburg. Huntington lost early in the season, the second week. Their only loss is to Martinsburg. So that's like you need 2 buckets for all those bonus points between the win over Huntington and the win over Spring Mills.
That'll keep them a solid 1 or 2.
All right. Also, we take a look. What I think is going to be a fascinating game. Princeton really on a roll. They're 9-0, trying to have a perfect regular season. They will play host to 5-4 Parkersburg South, who's 4A. Of course, Princeton is 3A. You and I had an opportunity to see Parkersburg South earlier this year when they came down and beat Beckley.
Yeah, and you know what? I got to thinking about that and looking at that game when they played Beckley. Both teams have kind of spiraled a little bit after that. But Parkersburg. Parkersburg South lost. I think they even lost to
Parkersburg South had a loss coming into that Beckley game,
and then they won one, and then they kind of
fell out a
little bit. And this is a game that I think they better buckle up their chin straps, because I really think from the third quarter of that Independence game, this Princeton team has been rolling, and this is no disrespect to Princeton. That Independence team was punching them in the mouth there in the first quarter and a half. But still, with their superior athletes, they were still able to have the lead. And but I think the light bulb kind of went on, and this team's on a mission since it went to the what was the 3A championship last year against Martinsburg. And I think they have tons of talent. They have a big line, good coaching, and this is going to be a tough road contest for Parkersburg South.
And that's the thing you touched on, Eric, and I so agree. When you talk about Princeton, and everybody always, which is correctly so, talk about Markel Lowe, the monster kid. Of course, Daniel Jennings signed to go to Penn State. Barker, the quarterback. You got all these skilled people, but their line is really good. Their line is good on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, and you know what? When you don't talk about the line, that means they're doing what? Their job.
They're doing work. Yes.
They're doing work. I mean, they lean on you on that defensive line. They got a couple guys that don't go both ways, so that helps. If you can bring in fresh legs on that defensive front. And I think their offense scores a lot of points, but their defense is way underrated. They hold a lot of good offensive teams to 0 points, and that's good.
Yeah, I think in all 4 classes that AAA is probably the most competitive. You have Bridgeport undefeated, and they crushed Fairmont last week.
At Fairmont, and
Fairmont's got 1 loss. Oak Hill and AAA's got a loss. Herbert Hoover's undefeated. Like I talked about, Bridgeport undefeated, Princeton undefeated. Boy, I think AAA is really stacked.
Well, the thing is that I know that Bridgeport loved getting that win, and I had heard their coach talk on a different podcast, and he says we're just treating it as another game because we're probably going to see them down the road. But I think what a couple of teams you just said might have something to do with that. And if you look at the way the bracket's going to fall, 2 and 3 are going to have to eliminate one another just to get back to 1. So you're looking at maybe a Fairmont-Princeton semifinal matchup.
Well, here's the thing, too. I think Bridgeport, of course, when there was only 3 classes last year, Bridgeport lost that game to Princeton 73-70, and it's amazing that you score 70 points and you got to get back on the bus if you're Bridgeport and go back to Bridgeport. It's like, wow, what just happened? We just scored 40-some points in the second half, 70 for the game, and we lost. So I think Bridgeport has hope that whether it would be the semifinals or the championship in Charleston, I think Bridgeport would like another crack at Princeton, and I think that would be, should it happen that way, it should be an outstanding game.
Yeah, that's one of those games I would pay to see, to watch that. But you're going to talk about a lot of college D1 level athletes on the field for both sides.
And also on Thursday, November 7th, the final game of the regular season for James Monroe and Bluefield. Bluefield looks like they're still going to make the AA playoff, even though there's 4-4. They had the game canceled with Independence because of the hurricane, so they're not be able to play 10 games. James Monroe is 6-3. The games at Mitchell Stadium in Bluefield, and if James Monroe can get a win 7-3, perhaps. I don't know if their field is approved for home game, but they would go to Princeton maybe if their field isn't approved.
Yeah, and this is one of those games where I wouldn't know how to call it, but you can say this one thing: a Freddie Simon team, no matter what, they're going to play you hard, and they're well coached, and he's done amazing job with this young team to keep them in it and saying, hey guys, we're still playing for the playoffs. And Bluefield, they're not one of those teams that's a scary Bluefield team like in the past, but they're young. A freshman quarterback, freshman wide out. Their best players and core players are young guys. So if you're going to get Bluefield, I think now is the time to get them, because they will build that program and it'll be ready to go next year.
Yeah, here's another thing too. If Bluefield should lose that game and finish 4-5, they still might get in the playoffs. And if that's the case, it'd be 0-0 when the playoffs started. And like you said, they're not the team they've been, but they still got good athletes. They still got good players.
Yeah, and good coaching staff. And I think that trumps a lot when guys, their Coach Freddie Simon doesn't blink. He's always had a superior team and had to play, up in the AAA ranks when he was even, when he was double A. Independence is starting to feel what Bluefield has felt,
Right.
the whole course of their being. So that's when you have a top level program.
Right. Of course, our podcast is brought to you in part by Modley's Plumbing and Heating. You never know when you need a plumber or to fix your heat until you need one. Modley's, you can dial them up 304-253-HELP, and by Massey Power Sports. Check out that nice lid I got from Massey Power Sports, and you get a great side-by-side. They got great deals now. Financing, it's great Christmas time, Christmas presents, and great time to be thinking about Christmas and getting out in the woods and get you a deer. Massey Power Sports. And also, Eric, we want to
like, share, and subscribe at Warden Broadcast Network on YouTube.
All right, now we'll switch gears to college football. The West Virginia Mountaineers enjoyed a bye week. They're going to be playing against Cincinnati up in the Queen City of Cincinnati. West Virginia 4-4 coming off a bye, as I mentioned. Cincinnati 5-3 also coming off a bye. And Eric, you're going to be there.
Yeah, I'm going to go check that one out. And I wouldn't say I was going to be a field reporter, but I'll be a spectator. And the thing, Cincinnati's coming off of a tough loss at Colorado. So good rebound week for them to, try to get back in it. But this is a game. I think this is the biggest game to date for West Virginia. And the reason I say that, they've had a little turnover, on their defensive side of the ball, got rid of the defensive coordinator. Somebody had to be the
I was going to ask you about that.
Somebody
you can go ahead and elaborate what your thoughts are about that.
My thoughts are, a lot of people are up in arms about it, but I think the head coach has to start somewhere, because his head's on the chopping block as well. And, he's in the meetings and he knows, they're going to get some new blood in there. Is it going to be a new voice that can fix it all? Because sometimes you can scheme it up if you don't have the players on that back end. So I think it's a little bit of both. I don't think there's a lot of chemistry in that defensive backfield. When you playing, I could get in all these coverages that I talk with you about off the air a lot, but it just doesn't. It looks like some people are lost, not on the same page. So hopefully this can change that.
Well, a couple of things that I find kind of intriguing with this matchup. It's like an old Big East battle, and I think West Virginia and Cincinnati, if they can work it out, I know now that they're both in the Big 12, they may not play every year, but it's a great regional rivalry, so it's great for the fans.
Easy
because
to get to.
When the game's in Morgantown, Cincinnati can make it to Morgantown, and of course, when the game, as it is this year in Cincinnati, it's easy to get to.
So the difference in the game last year, if we want to reflect back to that, WVU was able to really run the ball on Cincinnati. And I think their run game is getting a little better. In the last game, they ran it, pretty well against Arizona. But I think that's going to help ease the pain of Garrett Green. Like, WVU has to get that running game going. I'm talking about rush for 150, 180 yards to complement, the big play passing game. That'll open up a lot of play action and take some heat off of Green.
Another side note that I can tell you about with this Cincinnati game, and not necessarily the Cincinnati game, but talking about West Virginia letting their defensive coordinator go. And usually if you're going to let someone go, you do normally let them go maybe in a bye week. But here's the thing, did it surprise you that they let him go after a win?
Yeah, it actually did, because it was a win that you had the chance to watch the second half with me, that they pretty much, the defense let the team back in it with 2 big plays over the
Right.
top, and you just can't have that. And I think that's the straw that broke the camel's back. And Neil was like, "You're gonna ride home on the plane with me, but you might need to call a realtor."
All right. How about the Marshall Thundering Herd? The Herd got a big win, beat
man.
Louisiana Monroe. We were able to watch a little bit of that. Marshall's now 5-3. They go on the road. They take on Southern Miss. Southern Miss is struggling, only 1-7.
Yeah, on the road, anywhere, it's a tough place to play when you go to Southern Miss. But I think this Marshall team goes on the road and gets a W. I think they've kind of figured out the quarterback situation. They didn't platoon them this game, so I think now they're comfortable with who they've gone with. And the defense, they have 2 or 3 guys on that defense that I think has a chance to play at the next level in the NFL.
Yeah, we'll see if Marshall can have a strong finish and get themselves a nice bowl game.
Yeah, get bowl eligible, and who knows? I mean, that's one of those coaches. If you talk to the fan base, as you and I do, they don't like him. Everybody wants to fire their coach now for some reason.
Well, I don't know. I think we're in the era with social media and everything. You want to fire the coach, and no matter who the quarterback's in there, they want the next guy, right?
That's exactly right.
They always want the next guy.
Be careful what you wish for.
That's right. All right. And then Virginia Tech, they lost another heartbreaker. They lost in overtime in the Dome against Syracuse. They're 5-4. I can see you're crying for Tech, right?
Yeah,
but as
right.
you mentioned to me, you know that West Virginia and Tech maybe could end up playing in the bowl game. I don't know if that's possible, but that would be great if they did.
Think about, I want our listeners, or who, if you view this, we want to hear from you on this, because I was mentioning this to Maris. I said, look, no matter what, if both of these teams finish 6-6, whatever, if you put them in a bowl game, that will sell tickets, because the fan base from both of them would love to go get a win against one another.
Right. Virginia Tech will be at home. They got to take on Clemson. Clemson really coming off of a beatdown, because I think Louisville really punched Clemson in the face. And Clemson, I think that really rocked, not that Clemson still can't make it to the ACC championship game and get into the college playoffs, but I think that when the first inaugural college football pairings are released, I thought Clemson obviously would have been in there with the win over Louisville. Now, I think with the loss to Louisville, I don't think they're going to be in the top 12.
Yeah, and that's one of those things. And I think now it's a 2-horse race to the ACC championship game with the SMU, who both of us said would go and beat Pitt, because Pitt's been hanging on. I'm sorry, this is not haterade for Pitt, but I'm calling it like I've seen it. They could easily have 3 losses or 4. But that's just the ball has bounced their way, but they didn't need luck. SMU just rammed it down their throat.
SMU gave them 3 losses in that one game.
They sure did, and I loved it.
All right. So what do we got to do, Eric?
You got to like, share, and subscribe at Warden Broadcast Network on YouTube.
And, of course, this is brought to you in part by Modely's Plumbing and Heating, 304-253-HELP, and by Massey Power Sports. And like I said, now's a great time. They got 0% financing. You can go to Massey's. You can get that side-by-side. What a great Christmas gift that would be for somebody.
And a free lid.
Absolutely. Tell them Mara sent you, and you get one of these nice hats, and it fits my coconut really well. All right. Now, we'll talk about some of the big college games other than the ones we just mentioned. One of the big games, and Eric, could be an elimination game, Alabama and LSU. They both got 2 losses. I definitely think the loser of this game will not make the college football playoff.
Yeah, both coming on a bye, night game at LSU. So it's going to be a big game. I like throw the football up in the air like basketball, kick it off, and let's go.
Alabama is a slight favorite, so LSU are normally pretty good at home at night and as an underdog.
Underdog at home.
Well, the reason it doesn't shock me because Alabama is a real public play. A lot of people like to bet on Alabama, and that's why they made them the favorite.
Yeah, but
even though they're not the same team as they have been.
That's right.
They're still good, but not the same team. And, of course, how about Michigan and Indiana? Michigan nowhere near the same team, and they have to go on the road to Bloomington to take on Indiana.
And the Fighting Signetti, man,
Right.
he has those guys going as he fell behind 10-0 and rolled off 47 unanswered points to knock Michigan State on their behind. And I think Michigan, they better find some offense going to was it Bloomington?
Yeah, Bloomington, Indiana.
Going to Bloomington, see?
Yeah,
My geography's even good today.
One of the things, too, that I thought was funny that Frank Signetti, Jr., the coach of Indiana, said when people said they didn't know who he was or know how to say his name, he said, all you got to do is Google me and you'll see the word win, because that's what we do.
That's what he does.
And that's what they've done. In fact,
going.
they are 9-0 in the first time ever in the program's history.
Yeah, a lot of buzz going surrounding that program.
And a big game in the Southeastern Conference, Georgia and Ole Miss.
I think Georgia, it's not the same Georgia team, but the Georgia that knows how to win. Their coach, they were on the ropes in this past weekend when we watched the game, and they found a way to overcome 3 three turnovers or interceptions by the quarterback and win the game. So I still favor Georgia over Ole Miss in that game.
All right, now we got to switch our gears to the National Football League. And there are two really big games. There's a lot of big games, but two games that stand out to me. And one of them is Pittsburgh against Washington. The game will be played at Washington. The Steelers coming off a bye, and both teams right now have an outstanding year.
Yeah, both teams, are solid at the quarterback position. I think Pittsburgh has really figured it out. Never questioned Mike Tomlin. Russ Wilson is a proven winner. I don't know why people are always on Russell Wilson when he's won just as many Super Bowls as Aaron Rodgers, been to more Super Bowls than a lot of the top quarterbacks.
Well, he's been to two.
Yes. So, I mean, that's more than a lot of quarterbacks.
Right, and Aaron Rodgers only been to one.
That's right. So, I like the way they play complementary football. Don't turn it over, that being Pittsburgh. And the run game is coming around again. So, I think it's going to be a battle of offensive line play.
And perhaps the biggest game on the docket for the NFL this coming week will be the Detroit Lions, who really now may have taken over Dallas for the moment as America's team. Because it seems like everybody's really behind the Lions because they've lost for so many years, and they're playing as good as anybody right now. The Lions will be on the road against the Houston Texans.
Yeah, and you're talking about a wounded, injured Houston Texan team that gave up 8 sacks to the New York Jets the last time out. So that's not a good recipe with this Detroit Lion defense, even without their best pass rusher and Hutchinson. They get after you. And I don't see anybody right now, even the Chiefs. But the Chiefs are still the Chiefs. But my top team in the NFL, my eyeball test is the Detroit Lions.
I think Detroit is playing better, but still, if it came down to one game until somebody beats the Chiefs, I would still take the Chiefs over Detroit. We can have 1A and 1B.
Yeah,
or
we
may not agree with each other,
yeah,
but right.
I'll take Detroit right now.
All right, now it's time for our barking dog. And Eric, you have really slipped with your barking dog, as you both of our barking dogs lost. We had the same one. We had the Dallas Cowboys, and I really thought Dallas was going to win the game straight up. I know you had rooting interest, but even when I was watching the game, they're down 14-10. I'm like, what the heck was that fake punt? And it seemed like after that happened, I was watching it with my brother Matt, and I said, Dallas is not going. It was like downhill from that point after.
Yeah, once you run a dumb play like that on the plus side of the field for them, it's not like we were past the 50. We were on our own 45. Dallas Cowboys ran it and lost it, and it's just like you. I opened my blue can and said, let's just watch the game and watch the Dallas Cowboys lose.
But here's what I said, Eric. I said it looked like Charlie Brown football. It did remind me of Charlie Brown when that happened.
It was
all
bad.
right. So both of our barking dogs did not bark. We didn't even bite a little bit last week. So, all right. So, Eric, you are 4-5. And I am 5-4. So who do you like this week as your barking dog?
I'm getting back to 500, and I want all you Steeler fans to know this. When you go on the road, I need you bad to go beat the Washington Commanders. Sack the quarterback. Bring them back down to earth, because I'm tired of hearing the Commander fans already.
Well, you know what, Eric? I was really close to taking the Steelers, but I just can't. I think Washington is playing too well. I think Jake Daniels, he is so smooth for a rookie. In fact, when the Commanders beat the Giants, he's the first quarterback in the history of the NFL, first rookie quarterback in the history of the NFL to beat the New York Football Giants twice in the same year.
Wow.
So I thought about this, and this is not a very popular pick, but when I looked at the underdogs, it just wasn't a lot that jumped out. First of all, Pittsburgh did, but I'm going to go with Houston at home. Even though I know Detroit's playing well, Houston's getting 3.5. They may not win the game straight up, but I think it's going to be tight. So I'm going to go with the Houston Texans and think they'll bounce back.
So you're 5-4 right now?
Yeah, I'm 5-4 right now.
Well, I predict the next podcast will be even.
And that's why you may not agree with this, and we will find out. So you have to do what to this podcast?
Hey, like, share, and subscribe at Warden Broadcast Network.
And this has been brought to you by Modley's Plumbing and Heating. You can call Modley's at 304-253-HELP and by Massey Power Sports. We hope you enjoyed the podcast. And I'm Maris Lowery.
And I'm Eric Thomas.
And you might not agree with us,
but
thank you for viewing.